Municipal police services find themselves in an unexpected position right now, facing lower crime rates for many crimes as people stay home and mostly out of trouble. In York Region, crime's down almost 20%. At the same time, officers have a new enforcement priority, making sure people stay physically distanced from one another. How's it all going? Well, let's find out. We're going to ask. In Aurora, Ontario, that's just north of Toronto, Sergeant Andy Pattenden of York Regional Police. And Sergeant Pattenden, it's good to have you on TVO again. How are you managing through all this?
We're managing, and great to be back with you, Steve, once again, talking about this new world we're living in.
Indeed. Let me just throw a quote at you that the Chief of Police in Toronto, Mark Saunders, said. He said that officers are moving away from an education phase, as it relates to COVID, towards a zero tolerance / enforcement phase. That's Toronto. How about north of Toronto in York Region? Would you say you're taking the same approach?
We're taking a bit of a different approach up in York Region. We've been responding to a lot of concerned citizen complaints about people not physically distancing or businesses that are remaining open during these times when they're supposed to be closed. In fact, over the last 5 weeks, about 1,400 of those complaints. We're still in the education phase, though, and I can tell you that we've laid about 17 charges so far based on those 1,400 complaints. So a lot of education going on up here in York Region, but I do anticipate that's going to shift to more enforcement if people are not listening to what our officers are telling them. But so far, compliance has been very high up in our region, and we're seeing it, with people maintaining that physical distance when possible, and as well businesses closing that are supposed to be closed.
Of those 17 charges, what are the people being charged with?
The majority of those charges were for the businesses operating when they're supposed to be closed. That was the majority. A few of the offenses in there were for some other things, some gatherings of people that were in excess of 5, and that kind of stuff. So again, it's mainly been the businesses that have been the issue that have resulted in fines, but those businesses are getting the message now.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does a business that's not considered an essential service, I guess I'm just going to put this colloquially, how do they get off opening at a time like this? Everybody knows they're supposed to be closed.
And that's just it. I mean, everybody knows what's supposed to be happening. I mean, the government at all levels has been great at communicating this information daily out to people. It's a shame we have to be out enforcing it based on the complaints that we're receiving, or our officers doing proactive patrol and finding these things, but they are. And that further education is happening. But thankfully up here in York Region, it appears that our community is listening, and they're maintaining the physical distancing that they should, and being closed if they're supposed to be closed.
Any idea off the top of your head what the fine provided for under that charge is?
Very significant. It begins at around $750 and can go up from there. So these are big fines that are being handed out, and we've heard cases right across the province where they have been handed out. So it's a serious offense, and the fine associated to it is very serious as well.
Now, we pointed out in the introduction that in York Region, crime is down 20%. Can you tell us, and that obviously that's a general figure, it doesn't necessarily tell us specifically what crimes are down by how much. Can you put a little more meat on that bone? What are you not getting called about as much now as you used to in the past?
Yeah, definitely. So overall, we're seeing about an 18% reduction in crime. That's the latest number that I've received overall in York Region. And the things that are down would not be shocking. So traffic violations down, just because there are less vehicles on the roadway. Residential break and enters, which are a huge issue for us in York Region, have been for years, also down. Why? Because people are home. But on the flip side to that, we were seeing a significant increase in the number of commercial break and enters that were occurring in our region as a result of businesses being closed. So, we had to change our enforcement efforts in that area, put more officers in those commercial areas, utilize our helicopter Air 2 to patrol those areas both day and night to make sure that there weren't people in there that weren't supposed to be. And we've actually seen some good results from that. The numbers of commercial break and enters are now at about where they should be at this time of the year. One other offense that I have to mention that is down, which has unfortunately taken a pandemic to bring it down, is impaired driving. And it's the same topic that I was on this show last time talking about. And it's been years and years in York Region since we've seen a decrease. And I can tell you that our impaired driving numbers are down about 23%, which is a huge decrease for us. And maybe as a result of all the bars and clubs and restaurants being closed. But it's something that we're tracking very closely, and maybe a silver lining in all of this here.
No doubt that's a silver lining. On the other hand, given that there are so many fewer cars on the roads these days, I am guessing that there are probably, well, there's always some, right? There's some hot-headed idiot teenagers, probably mostly guys, who are out there drag racing on the streets when they ought not to be. Are you seeing more of that?
Oh, we sure are. And just video being released this morning out of Toronto with a vehicle doing donuts in the middle of Yonge and Dundas Square. This is the kind of stuff that we're seeing right across York Region, right across the province. And as we talk more about it, I'm getting information from officers around the world who are seeing incidents of stunt driving, which is 50 kilometers per hour over the posted speed limit, on the rise significantly. In York Region alone, we're seeing a 64% increase in stunt driving charges. Again, the speeds are incredibly high. We just issued a media release about a driver that was charged 119 kilometers per hour in a 50 zone. Came to find out he also had some cannabis in his system and was a novice driver, facing a ton of charges now. But that's just one of so many incidents. We're, over 100 incidents in the past month of stunt driving. So if you think about it, this is happening on our residential streets. There's more people out walking around these days, it seems, and speeds like that, you lose control of that vehicle. Either the driver is going to be dead or somebody that they hit is going to be seriously injured or killed.
I thought cannabis was supposed to make you calm down, not speed up.
Yeah, cannabis and speed, a deadly combination, but we're seeing it. But yeah, in this particular case, the driver was doing anything but slowing down, and come to find out it was only a few weeks ago he had also been charged with stunt driving. So there's someone who's not getting the message, who's taking advantage of our roadways being relatively empty to drive at just ridiculous speeds.
I guess the trouble is, though, that this is a guy who understands that the prisons are basically closed right now, and the justice system is doing whatever it can not to put people behind bars. So do you get the sense that there's a feeling of invulnerability out there?
Yeah, it might be, and they might be thinking as well that police are busy doing other things. But what's actually happening is there's probably more officers on the road during the day than previously, because think about it, the courts are closed. So traffic court, criminal court are closed. Our officers spend a lot of time during the day in those buildings, and they're not now. So we have a lot of vehicles out on the road, and we're watching for these people driving at these crazy speeds. And yeah, it's a shame that that some people are taking advantage of these empty roadways. And I have worries about our healthcare workers who are taxed doing what they should be focusing on COVID-19. If these people are coming in with injuries as a result of motor vehicle collisions that they're causing themselves, it's just another drain on the system that doesn't need to be happening right now.
Yeah, just one more thing on this. I don't want to sort of feed a stereotype if it in fact is not the case. I said it's probably, young male teenagers or 20-somethings. Is that in fact the case?
We're seeing all ages, and ages of people that should know better, who've probably been involved with something previous, who ought to know better. And it's not just here. Like I said, it's right across the province of Ontario. I saw OPP reporting a driver over 200 kilometers per hour on the 401 that they caught. Ridiculous speeds, and there's just absolutely no reason for it. It's really putting people in danger.
200 kilometers an hour on the 401.
Yeah, over 200 kilometers per hour on the 401.
I didn't even know cars went that fast. Anyway.
Oh,
okay.
Some do, unfortunately.
I do need to ask you about this because we have had people on this program in the past who, for example, run domestic abuse shelters, and they say across the board, quite tragically, their numbers are way up. Are you finding that as well?
Yeah, we absolutely are, and that's a very concerning number for us. In York Region alone, we're seeing a 22% increase in domestic incidents. Now, let me preface that with a domestic incident can be anything from a call to a residence after a verbal argument amongst family, when police have been called, all the way up to the most serious cases of domestic violence. But a 22% increase is definitely concerning for us. Unfortunately, not unexpected, as more people are at home, more people spending time with each other. Add on to that the financial stresses and pressures and anxiety that COVID-19 is causing, and it is creating a bit of a toxic situation in some homes. So, I'm glad you guys have had community groups on before from shelters and so on, and we're encouraging anybody in the community that is in a volatile situation to please reach out to these many community resources that are right across the province. We have some great ones in York Region. If you want to go to our website at yrp.ca, we have links to some excellent organizations there. But yeah, you really need to reach out. And of course, if you're in a volatile situation and there's an immediate need for, your safety is at risk, don't hesitate, call police, call 911 right away.
Are there any new crimes that are sort of reflective of the pandemic era in which we now live that you maybe didn't see before the COVID-19 crisis began?
We had one yesterday that we were talking about that is just an unfortunate incident, and it was in a convenience store. And we had someone there making a purchase at the convenience store. The employee had asked this person to back up away from the counter to physically distance. And what ended up happening is the patron took exception to it, grabbed the change that he was going to use to pay, coughed in it, tossed it at the employee, and then just told the employee that he hoped he got COVID-19, and then walked out. Thankfully, this convenience store had some great video surveillance, captured the entire incident, and our investigators were able to identify who this person was who did this. Now he's charged with a criminal count of mischief for coughing on that money and potentially making that money dangerous to the employee. So that's just something we wouldn't have seen pre-COVID-19. People get upset with at these stores. But something like this is just it's unacceptable and just unwarranted, unneeded at this time. The employee was a 17-year-old boy who we later found out had an immune compromised person in his family. Think about it. This 17-year-old is out there on the front lines. He's out there making sure that people can get what they need to purchase during this time, and he's put at risk like this. It's just unnecessary, and I hope that criminal charge that was laid is a strong message to anyone else who can't have the patience to make a purchase in a store properly, that you could potentially be facing criminal charges.
Sergeant, what about, I guess I've heard a couple of anecdotes of, of young rabble-rousers getting arrested and, coughing on officers who do that. Are you hearing those stories as well?
Thankfully, we haven't had cases like that in York Region. I've definitely heard the stories in the media reports from right across the province and various police services reporting that. It's a sad part of policing that our officers on the front line face abuse from people, and it's not uncommon for our officers to be spit on. But in a time like this, when we have COVID-19, the threat of COVID-19, it's a shame that something like that is happening. Our officers, again, they're the front lines. They're out there putting themselves at risk, their families at risk to make sure that our communities are safe. Please respect them. We ask people of this, but unfortunately, sometimes the people that we deal with have no respect for authority or police, and that's just a part of the job, sadly.
Well, how do you protect yourself from that kind of thing now?
Our officers have gone through a lot of training, and I give credit to York Regional Police and Chief Jolla for taking action very early on and making sure that our officers have the proper protective equipment with them, that they're trained on that equipment, and that they have it. So, the first step that was put into place very early on was when people call 911, there was a set of screening questions that were put in place so that officers attending an incident would have an idea if there was any sort of risk to COVID-19 potentially. Following that, officers have the N95 masks to put on and gloves to wear, and they can take the appropriate precautions to decontaminate if necessary. But, we've also been working to maintain our physical distance, and in a role of policing, we don't always have the luxury of the time to put on a mask, put on gloves, and maintain distance from people. So our officers are doing absolutely everything that they can to be safe, and they're doing a great job of it out there on the front lines every day.
I do want to consider the other side of the equation for a moment here. Here was a tweet from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association not too long ago. This was on the 11th of April, which said, "The power pandemic has infected bylaw ticketers, some police forces and some elected to serve the public. Over-policing and enforcement mania is divisive and erodes trust in authority. Leadership needed, not a crackdown on a walk in the park." This is the former Attorney General of Ontario, Michael Bryant, who is now the head of the CCLA, who are saying that, some of this over-policing, some kid on a skateboard by himself in a park or something like that gets handed a ticket. It just, it just encourages people to flout the law or disrespect the law. What do you say to that?
Well, it's up to the municipalities as to how they've put in these bylaws with regards to physical distancing and the spaces within in the municipality. I can tell you, based on the numbers that we've had, as I mentioned earlier, 1,400 complaints from citizens of York Region, only 17 charges laid. So I wouldn't call that in York Region an overuse of these laws that are in place. But many of our political leaders at all levels have been talking about how serious this is, how they want people to stay at home. They want people to physically distance. Laws have been enacted and are in place now to ensure that takes place. And it's up to either bylaw, police to enforce those laws that are there. So, no matter what happens, you're always going to hear of some cases that maybe, the fine should not have been handed out. But to keep in mind, everybody still has that right to challenge those tickets in court and in that process when our courts open back up. So if they feel they've been wronged, then there's definitely that process in place to go and fight those tickets. But just with the numbers that we're seeing, education has been the primary focus for York Regional Police and our officers. And I'm sure many police services across this province, as well as by law enforcement officers, are doing the best that they can to educate. But there's people who don't want to listen and just want to do what they do, even in these times. So those fines are there and they are being used.
I do wonder, though, whether some of your officers feel, well, I don't know, they're accustomed to sort of investigating much more serious crimes. And right now, I guess some of them are wandering around parks, warning people don't play basketball, even if you're by yourself at an empty park or something like that. Do they feel a little underutilized or silly about it?
I haven't heard that from our frontline officers. In fact, we're used to adapting and changing to changing laws and circumstances. It's one of the things we do. So with the overall crime rate being down in York Region, our officers probably do have a little bit of extra time to be doing some of those proactive patrols and especially in areas that we've designated that they should be doing it. So no, I haven't heard that as a complaint from officers. And if you look at other legislative changes that came into place, like cannabis, where one day it was illegal, the next day it's legal, and the amount of training and changes our officers had to go through to deal with that. We're adaptable people, and that's what we do, and we enforce the laws that are there. And we are guided as well by the direction from our executive command team, who give us the policing priorities. And I know right now COVID-19 and these issues in place to make sure that people are maintaining physical distance, that they're not gathering, that businesses are closed when they should be, is certainly a priority in York Region.
Well, let's be fair here. Some of you are adaptable and some of you aren't. I saw in Hamilton the other day, a police officer gave a ticket to a homeless guy. I mean, that feels like a bit of a waste of time. This is a guy who's living on the streets and obviously doesn't have $1,000 or $750 to pay somebody like that. We're also seeing some criminology experts alleging that tickets and charges are going disproportionately to poorer people, more homeless people, Indigenous people. What can you tell us about that?
It's tough for me to speak on that as a member of York Regional Police. The fines that we've laid have not been in line with what you're talking about there. So it's tough. But again, it's up to officers. It's up to their discretion. I definitely caution people about what they read on social media as to how they think officers interacted. There's often a lot more to the story than is originally portrayed. And sometimes, as police, we can't give out that entire story to talk about why that charge was laid. But again, there is a process for people who feel that the ticket that they've received was not proper, was not in line with the offense. That court process, once the courts open up, I'm sure that they'll be busy with some of these tickets that are handed out, as the fines are very significant for them. So, but the rules are quite clear, and we urge anyone who has questions about those rules to please give us a call. We'd be happy to answer them. Check out any of the many websites that are out there from police services talking about all these new rules and how they can and will be enforced. Educate yourself, because if you're caught in a situation where the officer is not educating, they feel that they've educated enough, and they're in the mode of giving fines, you could be subject to a fine if you're violating any of these laws.
Sergeant, we're down to our last 30 seconds here, and I wonder if you noticed the story that happened a little while ago in Hamilton, where they arrested somebody for dealing cocaine, but they charged him with something other than drug trafficking. Did you hear about this case?
Yeah, I certainly did. And there was a charge laid, I guess, under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act about operating a business when that business should have not been operating. So again, there's a case where officers, I'm sure, had a lot more information than we're privy to about the type of business that was being run and what they ended up finding. So officers there laid that charge. But we haven't seen anything like that or a charge like that being laid in York Region. But it'd be interesting to hear what the facts are in that case as it plays out in court.
You could have a good debate about whether dealing cocaine is an essential or non-essential business. Anyway, we don't need to have that discussion here. Andy Pattenden from York Region Police, it's good of you to join us on TVO again. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Steve. A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.